That's a Brown, Leader of the Council, and I'm chairing the meeting tonight. For the public record, we have Cabinet members present here in the room, as well as a number of senior officers. Some non-Cabinet members are also present, and additional officers are also joining the meeting virtually online. If any virtual attendees wish to speak, they should indicate with the yellow hand icon and we will pick this up in the meeting. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded by the Council for subsequent broadcast via the Council's internet site. Can I please ask Cabinet members to introduce themselves and state their portfolio area, and any other speakers, when they come forward to speak, can they also please introduce themselves when speaking? If I can start with Councillor Ovett.
Councillor Asda Ovett, Cabinet Member for Communities.
Councillor Ruth Gordon, Cabinet Member for Placemaking and the Local Economy.
I'm Emily Arcan, I'm the Cabinet Lead for Culture and Leisure.
I'm Lucy Lesneves, I'm the Cabinet Member for Health, Social Care and Wellbeing. Councillor Sarah Williams, Housing and Planning. Stina Brabazon, Cabinet Member, Children, Schools and Families.
Finn Macentwani, Cabinet Member for Resident Experience and Tackling Inequality.
Donna Carlin, Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate Services.
Mike Cutter, Climate Action, Environment and Transport.
Thank you, everyone. Item 2, apologies. I don't believe you've received any apologies.
None received, yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Item 3, urgent business. There are no new items of urgent business tonight. Item 4, declarations of interest. Can Cabinet members please indicate if they have a declaration of interest to make? Councillor Lesneves.
Chair, thank you. In accordance with the Council's Constitution and Part 5, Section Part 5, Paragraph 5.1 and Paragraph 6.1, I wish to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in items 12 and 22. This is by virtue of being a trustee of the Selby Trust. I will recuse myself from the meeting for these items.
Thank you, Councillor Lesneves. Councillors Patton Carlin are board members of the North London Joint Waste Authority. On the 26th of September 2024, the Standards Committee agreed to grant a dispensation to Councillor Catter and Councillor Carlin to allow them to participate in debates and votes on matters relating to NLJWA business, waste disposal, energy from waste, waste facilities, waste transfer stations, reuse and recycling, and any other waste-related issues until Councillor Catter and Councillor Carlin cease to be a member of the NLJWA and until May 2026. Therefore, they will participate in the item on the NLJWA strategy 2025 to 2040. Item 5, notice of intention to conduct business in private, any representations received and the response to any such representations. So there were no representations received at the agenda publication stage in relation to the exempt items on the agenda. Item 6, which are the minutes. Can we please confirm and agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June 2025 as a correct record, please? Item 7, amendments to agreed minutes. This item seeks to amend the extract of the minutes on the 22nd of April 2025 to accurately record the decisions taken. This amendment is proposed as it has since been recognised that the recommendation for within the previously agreed minutes did not contain all of the sites in the report. The full report made reference to the correct number of sites and wards. The resolution is amended accordingly. All amendments are marked on the proposed version of the minutes. Strike-throughs are the proposed removals and in red are the proposed additions. Amendments can be found on pages 31 and 32. Can I ask that members of the Cabinet agree to reopen the extract of the minutes on the 22nd of April 2025 and agree the amended minutes on pages 31 to 34? Thank you. Item 8, which is deputations, petitions and questions. We have none received. Item 9, matters referred to Cabinet by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So we will consider the report from the Climate, Community Safety and Environment Scrutiny Panel, which is a one-off scrutiny review of community safety. And this will be introduced by Councillor Matt White, who is the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny. Councillor White, you have 5 minutes to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to be introducing this review on scrutiny review on cluster community safety that was carried out by the Climate, Community Safety and Environment Scrutiny Panel. Sorry for mincing my words a little bit there. It's changed its name since the time this was conducted due to changes in responsibilities. I just really want to place on record thanks to Councillor Lester Buxton, who led the panel and this scrutiny review, and the members of his panel last year, and to the officers who've worked hard to put this report together. And Councillor Buxton has asked me to place on record his thanks for the contributions of the youth panel members who joined the panel for this review and asked some really insightful questions which led to some of the recommendations. There are 9 recommendations in the report. I'm not going to go through them all, just to note that there's a kind of common theme among the recommendations, which is how local government, law enforcement and the community can work together to tackle antisocial behaviour. And on behalf of the panel, I'd like to express gratitude that the report in front of you this evening recommends accepting all of the recommendations and includes some detail on how they'll be implemented. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Can I ask Councillor Ovac to please respond to the recommendations?
Thank you, Councillor White. And yes, as you said, it has been accepted all the recommendations, and I won't repeat what's been responded within the report, but I just want to highlight some key points. The Housing and Community Safety team have been working closely on drafting an ASB policy to ensure there is clarity on the definition of ASB processes and procedures. In line with transparency and collaboration, the draft policy will be brought to the upcoming Culture and Community Safety and Environment Scrutiny Community Panel. Additionally, we look to improve the resident experience and journey by making the online ASB form and information on the Council's website more prominent and user-friendly, taking into consideration user feedback once the ASB policy has been finalised. To ensure we have a youth voice, which you mentioned, they were at the panel as well. We will be inviting the members of the Youth Council to the Community Safety Partnership. And to ensure there is consistency within ward panel meetings, the police have produced a standardised governance and handbook across the MPS. Additionally, to engage with a wider public audience and for the sake of transparency, the MPS have introduced a new communication platform called NetEngage. And I would encourage everyone to register with NetEngage to be kept informed on local MPS updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any Cabinet members have any questions on the scrutiny report for Councillor White? Okay. Do Cabinet members have any questions for Councillor Ovac on her response to the scrutiny recommendations? Okay. Can I ask Councillor Corley Harrison? You have no question. Okay. So if we can now move to the recommendations proposed by the scrutiny panel. Are the responses to recommendations agreed by the Cabinet? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you. Okay. If we can move to item 10, which is the 2024-25 Provisional Financial Outturn Report. Councillor Carlin.
Thank you, Rita. Over the last financial year, Haringey prioritised supporting our most vulnerable residents and striving to provide excellent services that our residents rely on and enjoy. However, despite considerable extra funding being put into the 24-25 budget, this outturn report shows that demand and the cost of delivering essential services again outstripped funding, primarily again in adults, children's social care and the cost of providing temporary accommodation. Adult social care supported almost 4,000 vulnerable adults. Children's social care supported over 5,000 children, and there were 2,630, about, the numbers go up and down, of all of these households in temporary accommodation. These overspends were predicted throughout the year. We had initially agreed with the government for £28 million of potential exceptional financial support, but judicious use of various contingency funds and reserves reduced this to a £10 million borrowing requirement to close the budget. The Council is doing everything possible to mitigate these additional costs and to make sure that every pound counts. We are doing this to keep cuts to frontline public services in Haringey to an absolute minimum. Haringey is a borough with high levels of deprivation and deep inequalities between East and West. We are ambitious about what we can do to help local people, even with very serious limits on local public spending. We work tirelessly to make the borough fairer and greener with the tools and funds that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. Does any Cabinet have any questions for Councillor Carlin? Councillor Hikata.
I think, the work that's been done, and this shows testament to the amount of hard work that has gone into creating a sustainable financial environment, considering the pressures that we're under, which are immense. And in the beginning of the report, it talks about cross-service area working, much deeper cross-service area working in order to overcome many of these issues and obstacles. I just wondered if you could give some detail on what that actually means.
I think the question was answered.
Does he not know? No.
So in terms of cross service, it's things such as working transitions between adults and children's. It's working across what we do in terms of again with adults and temporary accommodation. There's generally trying to work as a whole council as opposed to working in a siloed and directed manner. Taryn, is there anything else we'd like to add to that? I think that's.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. My first question is clarification, so that will lead into what I ask on the other questions. So for the capital direction, 10 million, are you looking at the capitalisation of assets, or are you looking at a PWLB loan?
For the financial year just passed, it's going to be borrowing. Obviously, as a council, we do borrow already, and we have reduced that to the 10 million, but that will be we will be borrowing in that to close the budget. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So in that case, if you can just confirm the structure of the borrowing, that'll be at the annuity principle, right? You repay the loan and the interest at the same time, presumably over 20 years. I think that's what you were talking about before. So we're looking at about a £17 million repayment total, I think, at current rates. That's question 2, technically. And separate to that, before the use of kind of contingencies, one-off measures, etc., in the past 3 years, the overspend's been 16 million, 19 million, and now 38 million. So I appreciate that forecasting is incredibly difficult. It's a changing environment all the time. But obviously that's concerning that 3 years have seen quite significant variance. So what's kind of been done to ensure that that doesn't extrapolate further in the coming year and that we're actually accurate in our forecasting? Thanks.
Thank you. You are correct in terms of the money that we borrow, and yes, it does cost, and we do pay it back over 20 years. That's the agreement. In terms of the forecasting, obviously, that is we put money into the budget because we think that that's what the budget's going to require. But towards the end of the previous financial year, because we don't set the budget at the end of the year, we set the budget a few months before. We were already seeing pressures in the services starting to come through. And so Tara mitigated some of that by putting additional contingency funds into the budget for the financial year. We have a population, an older population, specifically in Haringey, that are older and getting ill, and those numbers, all councils are struggling with the cost of temporary accommodation, which has just soared, and it's very difficult to kind of predict exactly what that's going to be. But as I said, Torrance saw some of those pressures coming forward and did put additional contingency funding in. If you'd like to carry on.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. And just coming back on the first one, that as Councillor Carlin said, that's correct. It's over 20 years. It is the annuity method, but we borrowed almost the rate, the PWLB daily rate, which we know is still higher than what we want it to be. We usually use a figure of every £1 million of borrowing is around about 70,000 of borrowing costs. So your calculations are there or thereabouts. Now, as the PWLB rate comes down and it's forecast to, then any future borrowing, what I would say is that the borrowing there is no premium on borrowing for exceptional financial support. It's the same as the rate that we borrow per capital programme. And I think in terms of the overspend, I think it's difficult to comment on kind of previous years, but we've done an awful lot of work over the last 12 months, both as part of the 24-25 monitoring, but also going into 25-26, of which we'll see the Q1 report here in September, really trying to understand what's happening with our pressures, not just in those three areas of essentially social care and temporary accommodation, but getting under the drivers of it so that we understand the overspend, but in particular, what is going to continue into the future years. And we'll come on to the future report. We're already thinking about 25, 26 and what might be continuing into 26, 27. I think the very nature of particularly temporary accommodation and social care, once those residents are being supported by those services, they are there to be supported over the kind of forthcoming years. There will always be some one-off pressures, and I think they're highlighted in the report, but we try to look at what ones are continuing. And as Councillor Carlin said, we did increase the contingency in 25, 26 for some of those pressures. And I just really wanted to touch on the timing. It's going to be this challenge is never going to go away. We get, just because of essentially a process governance process to get the budget through, you almost need to lock down numbers around about the end of November, when you know that you've still got 3 months to go, particularly if I use adult social care as an example, you've got the winter period. So it is a real judgment call, and we are probably strengthening our use of scenario planning. I suppose what we will always know is we'll never get it exactly right, but we kind of use our best judge using scenarios. It's an area for continuous improvement, but hopefully we're getting some kind of openness and transparency about the drivers behind those pressures. Thanks.
If we can move to the resolutions as set out on page 46 to 47 of the agenda. Are we agreed? Great, thank you. Item 11, which is the draft 2026-27 budget and the 26 to 31 medium-term financial strategy report. Councillor Carlin.
Thank you, Linda. Haringey can point to a number of achievements over the past 4 years. Achievements driven by our priorities, from a good rating in children's services, building hundreds of beautiful, high-quality council homes, planting thousands of trees to improving our governance and internal processes. But we're still a council where many of our residents, especially those in our east wards, continue to live in circumstances of poverty, ill health and poor outcomes. And as a borough, we've had to make deep savings over the past 10 to 14 years. Considered out of London, we did not receive the top-ups that were awarded to some councils, but we also have an economy made up of low wages and small businesses, many working from home. We do not have the vast tracts of land for development and business that our northern neighbours can utilise. We fall through the cracks. The high level of need, increasing numbers of those over 65 and a large number in insecure private sector housing, over 50% in some wards, continues to drive the increasing cost of providing services our residents rely on. Adult social care, children's social care, temporary accommodation, the three primary drivers seen up and down the country. This paper looks at our current financial position and the medium-term forecast, taking into account global, national and local predictions. As a council, we are doing everything possible to make sure that every pound counts while providing the services our residents rely on. While the current proposals for fairer funding do not improve our position, we will continue to lobby strongly for a recognition of our particular circumstances and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin. Do any Cabinet colleagues have any questions? Okay. Councillor Coley Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. This kind of really builds on my previous question in some ways because, the government's currently working on the changes to the funding formula. The report says the latest consultation on the funding formula suggests that Haringey could lose government funding over the next 3 years. So why is the assumption no change in funding not being updated, with the MTFS proceeding on the assumption of a funding cut for the time being? And the report says that employee pay inflation is currently assumed to remain at 2%. But obviously, given a decade of pay restraint, public sector pay review bodies are recommended increases above that amount. Inflation is expected to remain over 3%. So it seems like a low amount to be baking in for the forecasting, to give accurate assumptions. And then around that, on the table that shows the current working assumptions, where it's got like best case, medium, worst case, it kind of works on an assumption, I think, on a medium level of £44 million budget gap, but then the worst case scenario of a £63 million budget gap. But that's with the financial support of 37 million in addition. So that's actually a funding gap of £100 million for next year. That's how I'm reading it. And that, I think, is on some relatively low assumptions, actually. And moving forward, so that would mean the council is having to repay borrowing on the government loans of £1 million in year one, 4 million in year two, 7 million in year three, if we were to go to 37 million again. So again, it's a question of our accuracy here and just how sustainable this is, really. I know it's not, but the worst case scenario isn't really, to me, a worst case scenario.
I'll let Tara answer because they're quite detailed questions.
Thank you. And I suppose a couple of general comments first of all. So this is the first time that we brought this report in July. So last year we brought it in November, but for me it was really important that we brought something around about now to kind of set the foundations for budget setting. It is based on a series of assumptions which we will absolutely keep under review, and you've picked out a couple that I will just touch on. So we will do regular reviews. I always describe it as we might have to put a stake in the ground at certain points in the process, but I think it was really important about bringing something to you, to Cabinet at this time. So in terms of, if I just pick up on the government funding assumption at this stage, so you're right, there is a consultation underway at the moment in terms of fairer funding, probably kind of long awaited, been talking about it for the last 10 years. It is so as I suppose we have alluded, so I suppose much of this report alludes to the things that we do know, but also the risks that we're carrying as well. So it is a consultation. It's quite a technical consultation. We're currently working through what that could possibly look like for London, for Haringey in particular. That in itself is a consultation. We don't know what the outcome is yet. We will absolutely respond. We will make the case for Haringey. We will lobby the Haringey's position, and therefore to assume some figures within a public report, we are looking at it internally. probably wasn't really appropriate at this stage, and therefore our best assumption is that it stays the same. But it was really important to me that I highlighted the risk. I always often talk about when you're not certain about something, it's quite important to put hooks in reports and kind of allude to risks and issues that you're carrying. So that's the reason that we've taken that assumption, because just the scale, we just don't know whether it will be positive, negative, or stay the same. But equally, consultations can change. It's really important that we make the case for Haringey, and let's hope that the technical formulas can change as a result. In terms of the pay award, we have assumed, so this is for 26-27, a 2% pay award. It's a really difficult one to judge. We know that negotiations in the current year for 25-26 are currently underway. It may be slightly higher than 2%. I think it's probably our best assumption at this stage. We know that inflation is forecast to come down. We tend to, at this point in the year, peg our assumptions essentially around kind of forecast inflation levels. But you're absolutely right, it's carrying a level of risk. We will have to see where pay negotiations end up this year and then make a judgment call. We are also, again, it's based on the set of assumptions. We are also talking to neighbouring boroughs around assumptions that they are making as well, not because our assumptions need to mirror, but just to make sure that we are not out of kilter as well. I think in terms of, for example, interest rates, we're also forecasting those at actually no, that was at 4%. So it's really difficult to tell, but we will keep them updated. And in particular, in November, when the Office for Budget Responsibility will update their forecast, that's what we will do. But we do know that we're carrying an element of risk. In terms of the scenario table, in terms of table 4, so the 44 million is based on current set of assumptions. So that was based on 1.99 million, 1.99% the council tax increase. Best case, the only change there is that we know that as part of the fairer funding and spending review, the referendum threshold has been increased, confirmed as 4.99. So that's essentially the difference between the current and the best case. We have then, I suppose any one of those assumptions can change, and what we've tried to do is give a feel for the scale of how much the change would be if any of those assumptions are incorrectly. The worst case, let's just say the worst case scenario that we presented here is 62 million. The likelihood, I suppose, that we've got all of our assumptions incorrect. Let's hope that we have got some of those. So 62 million, hopefully, is our very worst case. That is a new budget gap, though. That does assume that we deal with the 37 million that we are assumed to use in 25-26. So either not by drawing down, so that is a one-off. So that is the current working assumption, which we have alluded to in this report. We do know that pressures are continuing into 25-26, so we are carrying that level of risk, but any of the 37 million that we do use, we will need to either resolve for 26-27, or it will be an additional exceptional financial support ask. Does that make sense? It's really hard. It's because it's one-off. It's quite difficult to explain, but essentially, I think your understanding is correct. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. If we can move to the resolutions as set out on page 111 of the agenda, are we all in agreement? Great, thank you. Item 12, approval to tender for the construction of Selby Urban Village. Just for record, Councillor Das Neves is leaving the room for this item. It's Councillor Gordon, when you're ready.
Thank you, and I apologise for the K9 interruption earlier on. So I'm really pleased to be bringing this paper to the Cabinet. This is the culmination of many years of work on the Selby Urban Village project, and it's an ambitious project, and we hope that it will be a sort of placemaking exemplar for the future. It includes in its second phase, the building of 200, more than 200 council homes and a shop. And in the first phase of a community centre, workspaces, suite of sports facilities, play areas, an outdoor gym, cycle route, and so on. So it really will truly be the urban village we hope that have got the aspirations for. We've been working on this project in really close collaboration with the Selby Trust over many years now, and working with local residents. And I think local residents do want us to get on with it now. I've been consulted with them and worked on the scheme with them over many years. So I think it's been a great collaboration, and really ask the Cabinet to support us moving ahead in accordance with the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon, and years worth of work has gone into this. I think we're joined by Paul Butler as well today, so very exciting project. Any questions from the Cabinet? I'm stunned into silence. Okay, Councillor Gwillie Harrison.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Gordon. Just wondering whether you have an estimate for how long you think the referral to the GLA will take, first of all. And then it seems like the report says that the Selby's proposal to lease was included in the 2019 Memorandum of Understanding, but we're 6 years on, and that proposal hasn't been assessed yet. So I don't understand how that can be agreed without it having been assessed. Maybe I'm missing something entirely, but the two don't seem to marry up. Maybe it's just me reading the report that way. And then in 2019, well, 2017 was the Cabinet report. 2019, the Council transferred a 125-year long lease to the Bridge Renewal Trust for 250 266 St Anne's Road. I don't know if you recall, for a fee of £1. So I just wanted you to confirm what the plans are for the lease arrangements with the Selby Trust, and that there's not a similar kind of nominal fee arrangement scheduled here. Thanks.
I think I'm going to hand over to Mr. Sherrington for most of those. And the referral to the GLA, I think, will be very supportive of this scheme and want to see us deliver on the homes as well as on all of the other stuff. So they have been part of the steering group that we've got. Paul, attended that steering group. So the GLA are, has been on board with this journey for some time. And on the question of the lease arrangements, refer to the officers to give us technical an answer as we can, without obviously going into detail about any arrangements between the council and a potential leasing.
Thank you. David Sherrington, Head of Estate Renewal. So picking up those three questions. So the GLA referral is due in the next couple of weeks and should take between 6 to 8 weeks. The Selby proposal to lease hasn't been fully agreed yet. I think it's been a process of iteration between us and the Selby, a collaborative approach. Their final proposal has been submitted, and I think we're close to agreeing that. So I don't foresee any issues with agreeing that. In terms of the lease, that is all subject to a negotiation with the Selby Trust in the coming months. That lease arrangement will be coming back to Cabinet and will therefore be subject to public scrutiny at that moment. But in this meeting, we wouldn't go into the details of that negotiation.
Thank you. So we return to the resolution. Oh, sorry, we will return to the resolutions after considering the exempt information at item 22. Thank you. Item 13, which is the curbside strategy, electric vehicle strategy. Can we just get Councillor Dasnevs back into the room? Okay, Councillor Hakata, can you please introduce the report?
Yes, thank you. Haringey faces a striking contradiction. Almost 60% of households do not own a car, rising to 70% in many areas in the east of the borough. Yet streets are largely designed around the assumption that everyone drives. This presents a systemic failure, but also an extraordinary opportunity for transformation. Every metre of curbside space currently used for storing cars represents potential for uses far beyond transport, such as parklets, community gardens, play areas, seating, cycle storage and green infrastructure. The council's approach, though, is not about being anti-car. It's about being pro-choice and pro-efficiency. In this regard, we have been working hard to facilitate the transition to cleaner and greener electric vehicles. We have massively accelerated the installation of EV charge points across the borough, with around 300 now installed. The aim of the EV strategy is to ensure all drivers have access to a network of high-quality electric vehicle charge points, ensuring that the transition to electric becomes accessible regardless of income or housing type. These strategies underline our commitment to creating safer, fairer, healthier and more livable streets by reallocating valuable curbside space and promoting and facilitating the uptake of electric vehicles.
Thank you, Councillor Catter. Any questions from the Cabinet? No. Councillor Corley-Harrison.
Thanks, Councillor. So in the WSP document, strategy document, just a bit confused by the maps, some of the maps given and the street level assessments that were carried out. So for example, in my ward, Crouch End, the east side of it has been categorised one way, all the residential roads there, and the west side has been categorised completely differently, even though they're all residential roads as well, principally the same proximity to the town centre. So I don't really understand how they've come to the conclusions that they have come to. And the same document outlines sort of indicative costs for each potential intervention. I'm just wondering whether projected revenue, such as income from street trading or sort of street licensing, expanded CPZs, etc., factored into those calculations or not. And then the item as a whole only really has kind of minimal references to EV charging gullies, which is something that we've been calling for quite a long time. In fact, we had it in a budget amendment, and it was disregarded as ridiculous privatisation of the highway. So it's good to see that you've come round. But I'm just wondering why, when there's such appetite for it from residents, clearly from yourself, and the trial should be kind of cost neutral, why that can't come forwards quicker. Thanks.
One second, Maurice. I've got Maurice from the team here who will go into some detail on those questions. I'll just cover the gullies aspect. Obviously, as you know, the government has announced 25 million investment in curbside charging, and that is going to be welcome from us, because we have, as you've referenced, been developing a pilot for this. There are a number of complexities, especially around insurance and things like that, that need to be covered and make sure that they are covered correctly. So we had to take this slowly and not rush into it to make sure that it is done right. But as you say, we are rolling that out and we'll have the support of government. For the other questions, Maurice, do you want to cover the indicative costs for each installation, intervention, and what was factored into those, and also the maps and the street level assessments?
Thank you, Councillor. Maurice is the Head of Transport and Travel. Councillors, I will have a look at the accuracy of the maps. It could be that we've made a mistake. It's the first time we've undertaken this level of detail in trying to map our curbside in terms of movement and place and strategy. And I think as part of this engagement exercise, I think you'll pick up one or two things that the public will come back before we can update as we go along. So I think it's all indicative at the minute. In terms of the costings, they're all indicative at this point. I think what we're seeking to do as part of this exercise is also do a parallel exercise in terms of procurement
along the EV charging route. So when we come back to cabinet, we can have a strategy and a mechanism by which we can actually deliver those electric charging points. So we're looking at that in the meantime. I think what we find out is that there is demand for our curb space, and in that one of the highest demand is for greening of our streets and actually creating place for people to dwell. And I think we want that to be confirmed when we go out on engagement on the draft strategy. In terms of curbside gullies, is something that we are looking to fast track, and we had hoped to have rolled it out a few months ago. I think we are having some technical issues in terms of getting all that form designed on the web page, but I have reassigned that within my team, and hopefully within the next month or two, we will have something up on the website where we can actually start rolling it out. We have already spoken to those providers. We have 2 providers lined up to actually deliver it. It's just a mechanism by which to make sure that we are not putting the council at risk by making sure we have adequate insurance and maintenance of that infrastructure.
If I just point of clarity, if I may, it's not a further question, just on my second point about the revenue streams, it was more about, for example, there's obviously want for greener spaces, wider pavements, that sort of thing. If that were to happen, that could introduce further restaurant spill out, which could be more license fees for the council. So just making sure that that's accommodated for in any kind of revenue stream calculations. Thanks, Chair.
To confirm, it will be, councillor, and there is a demand on the curbside in that if we are widening pavements, we are removing a servicing and also paying display parking. So it's how we balance that right across the various demands on the network.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I noticed someone at the back had a question. We don't take questions from the public. It's not a public meeting. However, you can, of course, email, and you should email Councillor Mike Hakata, who will get back to you with your query. Okay. So if we can move to the resolution, which is on page 180 of the agenda, are we all in agreement? Agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 14, which is the Noel Park project. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. So, we all want fairer housing across our borough, and that's safe, warm, comfortable, affordable homes for all. And we have a major retrofitting and refurbishment plan for council homes across Haringey. In the Noel Park Conservation Area, we're retrofitting hundreds of homes. 103 have already been finished on Farrant Avenue, Morley Avenue, Mazel Avenue, with another 131 on Gladstone Avenue now getting underway. So we've got new roofs, windows, doors, other key upgrades are being made to keep homes warm and dry and to cut the cost of heating them for our residents. Affordable homes shouldn't just have genuinely affordable council rents, they should also be affordable to run. These works will help bring energy bills down. We're also fixing up the interiors at the same time in Noel Park, putting in new kitchens and bathrooms, bringing homes up to the decent home standard. This is just one project in our wider mission to get 100% of council homes in Haringey to decent home standard by 2028. So I recommend we approve this extension to the contract so that we can facilitate these really vital works. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Are there any questions from the Cabinet on this report? No. Councillor Queen Harrison.
Chair, thanks, Councillor Williams. So the report gives reasons for the increase in costs, but even so, a 50% increase on the original contract is, it's enormous, really, very substantial. I don't think can simply be accounted for just by, construction price increases, other market factors, improvements here or there. So are you sure that this is really still providing value for money against all other options, including alternative contractors? And do you think that this kind of increase is usual for projects such as this, especially I know it's phased, but partway through a project? And finally, do these cost increases to the council mean an increased cost to leaseholders? And if so, what will their average Section 20 bill increase from and to? Or will leaseholders have their bill capped at the amount set out in their previous Section 20 notices?
I think I'll come in briefly and then let Christian come in. So I think you talk about value for money. I think I've been given that reassurance that the scope of works, it being a conservation area, I think it was a very optimistic scope of works to start off with. Optimistic as in there wasn't too much to do, and I think as works started, so that bit is good. It means we're doing more works, getting the homes into a better standard. But also, I mean, given the timing of the original cabinet member decision was right in the middle of pandemic, supply chain, all of this sort of stuff going on. So I think I've received that sort of assurance myself, and then in the paper itself, the other options are considered and discounted on that. Yeah, but I'll let Christian come on your other questions in a bit more detail.
Christian Carlisle, Assistant Director of Asset Management. Excuse me. Yes, we have tested the market and we're using professional consultants to ensure that the project has and continues to deliver value for money. And as Councillor Williams mentioned, with the discounted options, they would generally be costing us more than the preferred option. On Section 20, no, there'll be no increase in costs to leaseholders from those originally circulated as part of the Section 20 process.
So does that mean the cost of the increased costs on leaseholders is absorbed by the council?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if we can move to the resolution as set out on page 280 of the agenda, are we in agreement? Thank you. Thank you, Christian. Item 15, London Borough of Culture 2027 delivery arrangements, creation of a charitable company limited by guarantee. Councillor Arkell.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure again to say how excited I am and we are as a borough to be hosting the London Borough of Culture in 2027. This will provide an opportunity to showcase the rich creativity and culture which is at home here in Haringey, and show that our borough is at home for creatives and artists, and enable our young people to see that the creative industry is a place for them to build and have a fulfilling career. There are risks which are both financial and reputational in being the London Borough of Culture, and the longer lead-in time compared to other boroughs who have hosted this prestigious award has allowed us to take a step back and carry out a detailed review and planning of delivery options. Research into previous models used by other boroughs have highlighted the need for a bespoke, sustainable and agile delivery mechanism suited to Haringey's ambitions and context. The proposed charitable company limited by guarantee model provides and sets out the governance arrangements to enable the delivery of the London Borough of Culture in Haringey in 2027, aligned with the borough's cultural and community ambitions. It supports legacy building beyond 2028. It allows for external partnerships and funding not readily available to a council-hosted programme, and it ensures continued council control through sole membership and board appointment rights, while maintaining appropriate independence and public benefit safeguards. The Articles of Association and Master Collaboration Agreement provide the legal and operational framework for effective partnership and governance between the council and the charity. And the approach will allow flexibility to wind down or repurpose the charity following programme completion, subject to the outcome of the 2020 evaluation. And I'm seeking Cabinet's approval to move ahead with the next exciting stage of the delivery of our year-long cultural and creative celebration by agreeing to the creation of the charitable company limited by guarantee. And finally, I just want to extend my thanks to Donna Maria Cullen, who is the Executive Director at Spurs and the Chair of Trustees at the Spurs Foundation, for providing a letter of support which is attached at the end of this paperwork, and also to the team here this evening who have worked so hard over the last 18 months to develop this proposal that I'm presenting this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Arkell. Any questions from the Cabinet? Really stunned them into silence. Yeah. Councillor Quilly Harrison.
Thanks, Councillor. So I'm just wondering how the independent members of the board will be selected with, true independence guaranteed, but also with kind of professional experience so that they can, bring that benefits to the board and obviously then the outcome of the whole programme, the year, etc. And are you able to confirm the kind of the level of funding the council will be providing to go towards the Borough of Culture? And that funding won't come from sort of the existing service budget, so it's not taking money from X to feed this, etc. And on that funding, whether you have yet got a breakdown of the allocation between staffing, so whether that is staff that is seconded over to the company or new contract or whatever, versus actual delivery, you know, when you go into the events, the programme, advertising, whatever else it may be. Thank you.
So in terms of the independent members of the board, obviously we will continue to have the controlling rights, but I'll hand over to Yamin in a second to just give a bit more detail about that. The level of funding has already been set out in our bid. Again, the exact amount, I'll hand over to Yamin to give that update. In terms of breakdown of staffing costs, I don't think we've got to a point in that level of detail yet, but I'm going to hand over to Yamin just to give a further update on that.
Thank you. Yamin Chaudhry, Joint Director of Culture and Communities. The council, in the appointment of the joint assistant directors at the time of Culture and Creativity, are leaning into the expertise in and around the CCLG in order to ensure that the independent members of the board are as supportive and have the level of expertise required in order to scrutinise and help make the right decisions for the charity. And we'll build from a smaller base initially throughout the lifetime of the CCLG. In terms of the level of funding and where it comes from, approximately £800,000 has been committed in terms of match funding by the council. This is new funding and not taking away from any of the funding already committed to civic events and arts and culture from across the borough. That is also all programme funding and dedicated to the delivery of the London Borough of Culture programming and not staffing. In terms of the level of in-kind support in terms of staff provided by the council, that includes people such as myself and Kenneth, the other Joint Director of Culture and Communities. We're estimating that there will be about approximately £200,000 of in-kind support provided. However, those levels are indicative at this point in time.
Yes, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if we can move to the resolution as set out on page 308 of the agenda, are we all in agreement? Thank you. Thank you, Yamin. Okay. If we can move to item 16, which is the North London Joint Waste Strategy 2025-2040. Councillor Cutter.
Thank you. The North London Joint Waste Strategy for 2540 is a comprehensive plan developed by the North London Waste Authority and the 7 constituent boroughs to revolutionise waste management in the region. This strategy emphasises the circular economy model, moving beyond take, make, dispose to prioritise waste reduction, reuse, repair and recycling as primary objectives, aiming for net zero carbon emissions from waste by 2040. It addresses the challenges posed by a growing, dense and diverse population, outlining targets for food waste and recyclable material reduction and detailing efforts to enhance local recycling infrastructure, which includes the new resource recovery facility in Edmonton, which has the capacity to process up to 300,000 tonnes for recycling, making it the largest facility of its type in London. It also is dedicated to the UK-based processing of recyclables and no offshoring of it. It also calls for government and business accountability in product design and waste costs, underscoring the necessity of a collaborative system-wide approach to achieve its ambitious environmental goals. I'd like to pay special tribute to Haringey's team for the hard work they've put into driving Haringey's waste reduction, reuse and recycling agenda and helping develop this strategy. And we have here 2 of lead officers. If waste management is the new rock and roll of environmental innovation, our own Tom Hemming and Beth Walser are the Rolling Stones.
Could have had a more current reference. Any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Ober.
I've noticed that there's this destination 50% target, in particular in terms of the recycling rate, and I just want to know where that measurement came from, why there is a 50% threshold and not a higher threshold in terms of recycling.
So before I answer that specifically, what I would say is I think we've actually gone through a waste revolution in the last few years, especially post-COVID. And what I mean by that is just that the kind of waste that we're producing is very different than before. So actually what we found is that packaging has got lighter, and all of this is based on tonnages. So actually we're throwing away more waste, but actually it's weighing less. And with the new government programs that are coming in, such as EPS and Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, sorry, and the deposit return scheme that will be coming in soon, we're going to see less and less packaging. So actually our ability, what's actually going to be going that we weigh as recyclable is actually going to become less and less. So I think actually in reality, we're going to find it harder and harder to reach that destination 50 based on the metrics that we currently have. But based on the metrics that we currently have and why we chose that, I'll pass over to Beth. And
Right. So destination 50% is actually our target. This is the same target, which was on there as that of the GLA under the London Environment Strategy. And just to add to what Councillor Hokata has said, it might be that they change the metrics moving forward because of the recognition that tonnage is not, weight-based is not necessarily the ideal solution, and we're waiting for further guidance in terms of reforms. So we've basically mirrored the London Environment Strategy.
Thank you, Beth. Councillor Jamwani, did you want to come in on that?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that it's the Mayor of London's target that we're mimicking.
Councillor Gaznev. Mike, you answer my question, which was that a lot can change and evolve over time, and as can both government policy and ambitions for how we respond to waste. How does the strategy enable us to respond to change and help us to see our way through into the future?
It's a great question, and I'd say that this strategy is actually ahead of the game. So it's at the leading edge of change. So instead of looking at how we can recycle more as being the main priority, how we can process waste more efficiently and more cleanly, it's actually its main fundamental purpose is to look at how we can reduce waste at source, and if there is waste to be processed, that is reused and where products are potentially enabled to be kept in circulation for longer. So looking at repair. So ultimately, the main aim of this is the circular economy, and that is kind of becoming, if you like, a new buzzword in terms of a systems approach to waste management. And I think that's underlined by the fact that this government is the first government to have a minister for the circular economy. So we're going to be seeing and hearing more from that phrase as time goes on, but that's really embedded in this strategy. I don't know if you want to add any.
Yeah, thank you. So I think some of the work that's in there in terms of engaging with schools, there's quite a comprehensive schools plan. So obviously, for future generations in terms of awareness, and with some of the community groups as well. And there's also going to be ongoing engagement. So again, it's not just once, it's continually. So to keep that cycle going, especially given the transiency as well.
Thank you. Any more questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Colin Harrison.
Who thought this would be the item with the most questions? So the report makes reference to government proposals to include waste incineration in the UK's emissions trading scheme. Which is common sense, given analysis shows incineration is now the UK's dirtiest form of power. And it also, the report notes that the NLWA is lobbying the government to mitigate the financial effects of this, should it go ahead. Given the fact that the incinerator project has been beset by delays, quite a lot of objections, central government is not showing much appetite to step in and mitigate the costs of policies to councils when there are lots of cost pressures. Is it really financially prudent to continue pushing ahead on the expanded incinerator? My second question, actually, Councillor Ovac kind of asked, although it was the other way round, why have we got a target of 50% recycling when the paper says that the best match recycling scenario is 40%? And we're not increasing our recycling rates. So, we should really be more realistic. But given that's already been asked, I get an extra question, right? So many flats have no food waste recycling, but large food waste bins can be installed in many locations. So will the council seek to find funding for this? And for my bonus question, but really it's a lobbying point to both Seema and Mike, can we do away with bags on High Street and timed collections at some point and have big bins or some other form of waste containment so that we can properly separate waste? It's not on our streets, it doesn't get contaminated, all of that sort of thing. Thank you.
So before your bonus question, could you just repeat that one, the penultimate one?
It was about food waste, flats above shops, etc. They can't currently recycle food waste. So whether we can introduce provisions for that, as that is a good source of reducing general waste.
Oh, okay. We can probably do a triple header on this one, actually. So I will focus on the financial prudence of continuing with the incinerator. The reality is that without us having, one thing is that the facility that's being built there will be the cleanest waste processing incinerator in the UK, if not all of Europe, right? So number one, if there was going to be one incinerator, it should be this one, right? But the reality is that if we don't have that facility there, then we will have to go into agreements with potentially dozens of other incinerators, sometimes potentially hundreds of miles away, right, to travel to process the 600,000 tonnes of waste that is produced by the North London boroughs. So the reality is that in terms of environmental impact, we will certainly be seeing something far exponentially worse if we don't have that facility on our doorstep. But it will also be financially far worse. I think the estimates are that by 2045, the cost of processing waste without that incinerator will be, for the 7 boroughs, will be about £180 million a year. 2045 with that incinerator, it will be £85 million a year cheaper. So financially and environmentally, it makes sense to do this, even considering there might be a 1 or 2 year delay for its completion. And before I pass over to Seema, I'll just say that in terms of the 50%, the reality is what we are now focusing on is reduce, reuse and repair. Recycling is actually at the bottom of that waste hierarchy, right? So although it's important that we capture it and we have the ambition to reach 50% of recycling, which we should, our aim is much higher up the waste hierarchy, ultimately to reduce, if not eliminate, most waste. And Seema, do you want to take over some of that stuff? So on the bags, on the
Councillor Carter, can I just, bearing in mind my maths teacher might be watching this and laughing, if you reduce waste and you're still looking for 50%, it's still 50%. So we just need to be quite clear here. It's not a fixed number. You could reduce the quantity and volume of your waste and still make sure that 50% of that is recyclable. So 40% might be the optimum, but 50% is what the mayor is asking for. And that's what's in the London recycling plan. And so to maintain consistency, we've gone with the higher, but we can still reduce waste in general and make sure that at least 50% of that is recycled. So I don't want anyone to think that it's a really good thing to lower the percentage, because it's not. It's actually a negative thing to do so. In terms of food waste, we're currently doing some food waste trials for flats above shops. I don't know how to say this, but it's not a nice thing. I mean, I live on a council estate, and having a communal food waste bin, you kind of do feel you've got to wear a hazmat suit to use it, because it ain't just you using it, it's 30 other people also using that food waste bin, and it's dirty and it's got things around it. And then when you've got it on a public highway, people are also using it to dispose of their waste. So we are doing different pilots, seeing what works, looking at what other boroughs are doing and seeing what works for us, because the last thing that we want is any councillors to say, can you get this bin off our high street, because it's awful and it's got loads of flies, and people are just putting non-food in it. In terms of business waste, just for the purposes of this item, I don't want to conflate the target from the Mayor of London, and what this is really focusing on is domestic waste. Oh, so you're talking about flats above shops. Okay, so we've got 3 solutions at the moment. We've got the bag collection, which I'm getting the impression you don't like very much. And then they've got to be put by a lamppost at a certain time, an hour before a truck comes. We've got repurposed grip boxes, which our grip boxes are yellow, but we found some black ones and people put it in there. And where there's space on the highway, we use Metro Store, which you can then also fit in a wheelie bin, and it's more secure and it's there. And a lot of this is down to the shape and size of the road and how much pavement space it takes up and what safety issues it has. So on some roads, the grip boxes work, on some roads, the Metro Store works, and on some roads, like some of the ones on Crouch End, there isn't really that much space. We can keep reviewing it, keep seeing what other boroughs are doing, keep speaking to the DFT about the legislated pavement width that we need to keep there, and keep finding solutions. But it's not because we don't want to. Green Lanes, West Green Road, parts of Alexandra all have different bin solutions, but Crouch End, it's the shape of the road. Yeah.
Thank you. We can move to the resolution as set out on page 342-341 of the agenda. Are we in agreement? Agreed. Thank you. Item 17, which is a review of the direct labour organisation repairs and voice delivery model. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. So this report brings an opportunity for Haringey to consider how we provide our repairs and voids service to residents, and the impact that this can have for our tenants, leaseholders, and for the council itself. Housing services have undertaken a range of work to improve services for residents through the Housing Improvement Plan, where there's been improved performance for the repair service from the impact of the work carried out. Although we are seeing the outcomes of these improvements, it is important to continue to re-evaluate how we deliver our services to ensure we are equipped to deliver the best service we can for residents. The information contained within this report outlines the need to deliver a responsive and high quality repair service that is cost efficient, which is also echoed by the consumer standard requirements as set by the regulator of social housing. Despite the fact that there may be mitigating factors for the difference in cost, the variance between Haringey's repairs and voids service and the wider industry indicates a need to review how we deliver these services to ensure that it is sustainable and delivers value for money. It's my recommendation that the council approve an options appraisal to be completed for different delivery models of the repairs and voice service, so that the scope for improvements is not limited and we can ensure the delivery of a high quality repairs and voids service that is cost efficient and offers value for money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Cooley-Harrison.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. So the report says the final timescales of the review will be finalised during the awards process, but given the sort of figures that the paper talks about in terms of comparison figures where we're basically double in terms of costs with both repairs and voids somewhere like that. Surely, like, this is the utmost priority. Like, there's no time to waste, kind of thing. So, what sort of broad time scale are you looking at before a potentially new delivery model is in place and we're starting to bring down those kind of average numbers? And then, as we know, some of the voids turnarounds, a particular group, have been carried out by sort of a supplementary service, let's say, supplementary voice service, in order to assist the kind of the internal team. Could that sort of not be compartmentalized, look at voids and their delivery model there, and kind of, rather than trying to group everything together as one thing, look at that, we already have this model in place, it's bringing these savings, it's bringing these time reductions, let's use that as our example there and follow that model, and then repairs can be considered in that, which is, I think, very, very complicated, I appreciate, could kind of be considered in a different separate review, rather than bundling them together and then voids having to wait for the review of the repairs delivery model, etc. I'm sure you see what I'm saying here. Thanks.
Those questions, I think timescales we're looking at about 6 months, and whether to review separately, I think I'd leave that to the officers. I don't know if Scott or Jahed wants to.
Jada Rahman, Director of Housing. I think it's probably worth just giving some balance to the cost argument. So whilst we fully accept some of our internal cost on the surface is quite in comparison to the private sector costing, there are legitimate arguments around why that may be. So our internal specification may be significantly higher. The condition of our properties may be significantly worse. On the repair side, if you look at how the private sector do their costing, they allocate it based on maximum repair per property. So if they've got a £10 million budget to do repairs, they will say we're not going to do no more than 4 repairs per property. Otherwise, it starts affecting our margins and our profit, which is why we're doing this deeper dive than the surface level review that we've done to date. In terms of the timelines, we are factoring around 6 months to do that detailed analysis. There are wide implications. So we do have 2 work streams. One will be looking at the responsive side, one will be looking at the void side. And any model that we may consider going forward may have 2 implications. So we do need to do this properly.
Quick note to the resolution as set out on page 446 of the agenda. Are we in agreement? Great, thank you. Thanks, Jared. Item 18, street lighting term contract extension. Councillor Chilwani.
Thank you, and thank you to Democratic Services for leaving this really important agenda item until last, because that's what everyone's been waiting for. So in 2019, we contracted Marlborough Highways as our street lighting contractor, and this was a 4-year contract with a 2+2 extension. In 2023, we extended for 2 years, and I'm here to seek approval to extend for the final 2 years so that this contract ends in June 2027. Over the years, we've converted all of our lanterns to LED lights. We have started to install a computer management system, or a CMS, and earlier this year we had a 5-year delivery plan to improve and increase street lighting in parks, transport hubs and cycling and walking routes. We've also installed hundreds of new lights in locations residents told us about through the Bright Ideas project, and there is more to come as we promised in our manifesto commitment. In 6.1 of the report, it states why we didn't go for an open or retender and the financial efficiencies for this option that I'm recommending now. And Leader, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Chilwani. Any questions from the Cabinet? Councillor Hakatta.
Just got a comment. which is, because this particular paper is the most exciting for me, after the EV and curbside strategies. And just want to say that basically the main drivers of the incredible 73% reduction in carbon emissions from the council's own emissions in recent years have been down to energy efficiency improvements in our schools, the partial decarbonisation of our council's fleet, investment in renewable energy production and delivery, retrofitting of our council homes for improved energy efficiency, sustainable building practices, embedding zero carbon practices in the council's own house building programme, and finally, LED lighting conversion. This programme has absolutely transformed the emissions that have come from those glowing bulbs on our streets. So hats off and major applause.
Noted, thank you.
It'll be officially noted. Okay, so if we can, you don't have any questions, or you do have questions? Sorry, you said none on my note. That's
shouldn't rely on external sources for me. Thanks for this. So I know the principle. I suppose, I don't know whether this is really a question to you, Councillor, or maybe Councillor Carlin, but it is more generally on the use of sort of extensions in contracts. I'm not saying that's not the right thing to do here, but we do have a tendency to do that. And I've noted it a number of times, particularly at Cabinet. And moving forward, as we're looking for financial efficiency, one thing that has concerned me about the kind of the nature to go for an extension has been that one of the principal reasons has been we haven't given ourselves enough time to do the market analysis, deep dive, go out to procure, full procurement and all that sort of thing. So we sort of sleepwalked into an extension. So that's not to say that that's the case on this particular item, but I just want to flag that we're not continuing that culture with the finances in the kind of the current position. So maybe that's Councillor Carlin. And then my second point, which is kind of in some ways in my scrutiny hat on, when we did kind of the work on the street lighting issues with Irvis and all that sort of thing, was that we did suggest that there was a look at the resourcing within our internal street lighting team and whether it needs to be bumped up somehow, because there's a lot of pressures on a very, very, very small team. And I think they could do with some additional resourcing was the conclusion of the scrutiny panel, although that was probably about a quarter ago. So probably that's more of a comment. Thanks.
Procurement, on the procurement issue, obviously that's something that we have been looking at and we are looking at to make sure that we aren't in that position, that we're not just rolling over contracts, whereas out making sure that they're best value and checking that we can't get them for cheaper. And it is an ongoing piece of work to make sure that we do that. So yes, your concerns are mirrored, because we obviously don't want to see contracts rolled over just because we run out of time. Yeah. And that has been a constant piece of work to make sure that doesn't happen.
So I appreciate you took the cheeky moment to ask a question about all contracts. I just want to give reassurances that I don't want a picture being painted that the staff kind of wait there and go, oh my God, we've got a contract that's meant to be renewed tomorrow. Let's get it to Cabinet. That didn't happen. The staff have really been looking at this for a while, and they've really looked at all of it. Are they going to get better value? Is it worth it going out to do a full procurement just to find themselves back here? And in 6.1 in the document, it kind of really gives you that story of why they've reached this conclusion. So I just don't want there to be an impression that, yeah, we're aware and this does happen and, we're keeping an eye on it. This didn't happen here, and the team have been really kind of pushing it here. In terms of your second point, I'm happy for you to keep coming here every month and start talking about how we need extra money in my portfolio and more staff. Carry on, come back, do that again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we can Agree with resolutions, minus the last comment, set out in 3.1 of the report contained on page 454. Do we all agree? Agreed. Thank you. Item 19, which is minutes of other bodies. Can we please note the minutes of cabinet member sign-ins from pages 461 to 476? Can we please note those? Yes. Okay. Okay. Item 20, new items of urgent business. There are none for this section. So if I can move to item 21, which is the exclusion of the press and public. So item 22 allows for consideration of exempt information in relation to item 12. Can I move that the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting to consider this exempt information as defined under paragraphs 3 and 5, part 1, schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Do we all agree? Excellent. So I'm formally closing the public section of the meeting.